Renaissance, Putti, the little things that we see on the Valentine's Day cards. And when you think of angels, is that something that you think of? For some people, yes, right? When you think of angels, do you think about the rock that you tripped over and sprained your ankle? And while you were attending to that, you realized that you were not on the train tracks when the big boulder came down and would have wiped you out. In certain theologies, that rock would be an angel. Lots of ways of thinking of angels. I confess that as I was oftentimes thinking of angels, it was in response to things folks would say to me. Oh, Rabbi, my angel saved me. Oh, Rabbi, she's an angel now, and, or any number of variations on that thing. And I have to say, to my regret, my initial response that I maintained for many years was simply, and for those of you who know the Yiddish, ugh, right? This is not what Jews think. So one day I was serving a congregation and I decided I had heard, in an especially spiritually seeking type of neighborhood in the Berkshires. And I had just heard one person with too tenuous grasp of reality, too many, say to me something about the angels. And I just had to do something. I sat down, and what you're going to get a taste of today is part of a much larger 6-session, maybe 9 hours worth of delving into angels and demons from when they first appeared in the earliest sources that we would eventually claim as Jewish sources up until the 21st century in St. Louis. And I decided to focus on the wacky for our session, having come to the conclusion that whether or not I necessarily believe in the supernatural phenomenon we call angels doesn't really matter, because certainly as a civilization, a people, a culture, and even as a religion, Judaism has, so maybe not such a goyish cup after all. And two, much to my delight, I've been able to use some of the concepts that have come out of my studies in ways that have been helpful and meaningful as people have been wrestling with their own angels and demons. So I learned a lot as I prepared for this, and I hope to help us all appreciate some of the craziness that Judaism has to offer. Oh no, how do I make this big? There we go, maybe. Yep. So I have to share some names of the Bible and some timeline with us for this to make sense. Anybody ever heard of the Feast of the Maccabees called Hanukkah? I figured as much. I start with a softball, right? By the time the Maccabees were up and running, there was a whole set of Jewish literature, mostly written in Hebrew, but not all of it, by Jews and for Jewish audiences and even communities. And there's oftentimes sources of traditions in these earliest traditions that the later rabbis hated and either had to make kosher by changing them or somehow try to adapt them. Book of Jubilees comes from this time frame, and among the heresies the later rabbis would point to about the Book of Jubilees is its insistence that a day starts at daybreak and a year is 365 solar days long. I know, craziness. Who would ever think that a year is 365 days long and the day starts at daytime and not at night the night before? So you get a sense I'm poking fun, right? So here's this text. The angel of the presence spoke to Moses by the word of the Lord, saying, write the whole account of creation. That, and now we get what sounds like a quote of the Torah. In 6 days, Adonai Elohim completed all God's work that God created, and observed the Sabbath on the seventh day, and sanctified it for the ages. I have to ask, with you all there, and me here, I understand that other speakers have done this. Are you comfortable with me doing this? Be careful how you say that. People will misunderstand and we would both get serious trouble.
You can do whatever you want.
Thank you. I appreciate the grace. So, what we have here, 6 days God did the work, and on the seventh day rested, is actually found in an ancient Jewish translation of the Bible from like 150 years before zero, in the Greek Jewish community of Alexandria. And it actually addresses a problem in the official Bible text that suggests, what do you mean that God worked for 6 days and rested and completed his work on the seventh? That's what Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 says. Here we have a tradition that says, worked 6 days, rested 7. And nicely resolves that issue. But the real thing here is what happened on the very first day. On the first day of the Hebrew Scriptures, God just separated the primordial mass from wet and dark and stuff like that. Here, before any of that, all of the spirits, angels of presence, sanctification, fire, winds, clouds, darkness, snow, hail, frost, resoundings, which is a difficult term, thunder and lightning, the angels of the spirits of cold and heat and winter and springtime and harvest and summer, and of all the spirits of his creatures, every creature in type has an angel. The deers have the deer angel.
Do we have our own angel?
Well, we're going to get there, right? There is a midrash that says that each and every single blade of grass has its own angel that goes, grow, grow, grow. Right? So I will tell you, I did not learn this in chapter, and I did not learn this at the seminary. That there's an entire account of an understanding of creation presented to be like the Bible for a different community, and the very first thing that we get is angels. Very first day of creation. Remember that, guys. It's going to be important. Let's see if I can get out of that. Good. Oh, please. Same time frame. This book is called Tobit. And what I really want us to quickly note is Raphael is the name of an angel, right?
And along Gabriel, too.
We're going to get to them. We're going to get to them, I promise. You know your angels, right? But notice at the very bottom line, what does Raphael say in his own identification? I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels that stands in attendance of Adonai and enter his glorious presence. Now, all of a sudden, when I hear 7 angels that attend God in the divine heavenly palace, I can't help but make an association between the number 7 of the angels as though there's one angel for every day of the week.
But this is the book, Tobit?
Tobit. Yep.
When was it?
About 130 to 140 BCE. BCE. Sorry about that. Bait Sheni. Sifrut Bait Sheni. Yep. Long before a lot of things. And again, I'm trying to get out of this. Maybe you'll excuse me. I think I can make this work this way now. 3. So let's talk about these angel names. Suruel, I wish I had brought a Hebrew to give you the shortish, the root of the word. But tsuru is with a sin and a resh, like the word sar, like a minister. You would first recognize it from the Hebrew Bible as the name Sarah, as in princess, like Sarah Iman, right? So Tsuru El, of eternity and trembling. Raphael, and here he's one of the holy angels, for he is of the spirits of man, which is a strange statement. The word Rapha comes from Lirpot, Refuah, healer, God's healer, or God is a healer, the healer God. All of those are good translations possible.
So it's not the right translation. So it's really a seller, like a rock.
That's with the tzadi. I said this is with the sin. Suru, not tsuru. And again, if I had the Hebrew, I would point it out. And it could be right that it absolutely, if it is with the tzadi, absolutely it's sur, like Sur Yisrael the rock, or in God is the rock. And here, the name Michael, Michael. And oftentimes, I think that name is misunderstood because it points to something dangerous. Yeah, bitiyu. Though not in the interrogative, who is like God, question mark. Rather, who is like God? Me, the one who is Ka-El, like God. And it points to the idea in Jewish angelology that there is an angelic hierarchy, and one of the angels, and we're going to see that angel is called different things at different times in different sources, is the number one angel, what's in charge and is just under God in making stuff happen. And if that doesn't go a little anything you've ever learned in Sunday school or Schechter, it should. All right? This is not the stuff that Jewish education embraced after the Enlightenment and the rise of the Reform movement in Germany in the 1700s and 1800s, because this is wild and wacky. What do you mean? Because there's only one God, and God is one, Adonai Echad. And there's a number two God? I'm so confused, right? Sarakael, and again, I wish I had the Hebrew in front of me. Gabriel, Geber, for strong one, brave one, warrior. Gabri, my strength, is El, who has the responsibility of overseeing Gan Eden, paradise, meaning the earthly paradise, not the heavenly paradise, along with not one, but the multiple serpents, the snakes in the grass that even exist in paradise. And the Kruvim. You'll remember that when mankind was banished into their adolescence outside the garden, a divine being was placed with a flaming sword. And the Hebrew Bible doesn't identify it as a kruv. It identifies it as something else. The kruv is more like the idea of the phoenix of other mythologies, as far as the beast, the sacred beast. And the kruvim that are on the Ark of the Covenant have these wings, and they reach out like this, one side to the other, so it makes like an ark. And in the emptiness of the space between the kruvim that sit on top of the ark, God's voice would come through the vacuum. That's so right in the Torah. I don't make this up. Right? So to get a sense of, I wonder, when you go from garden and serpents, and then you say the kruvim, was there a tradition that there was a karuv instead of the other type? I think the Hebrew text is a saraf. Right? I could be wrong.
What are the cherubim?
The kruvim were ancient beasts. The cherubs that you're thinking of, like my dear high school guidance person, cherubs, no. There was nothing sweet about the cherubs. They were dangerous, scary beasts that could just devour you in a moment. These were protective beasts. Just like in front of all the ancient temples throughout the Middle East, the ancient Near East, the Middle East today, where there were big lions or other things to protect, the Kruvim were protective mythological beasts. All right, so now we're going to get even more. We're back in the book of Enoch. I've skipped through, we started in Jubilees. We went to Enoch. We saw Toby. We're back in Enoch. All around the same general time frame. In this setting, decades really don't matter.
Excuse me.
Sir?
Are those books, are they in the Bible?
So, interesting question. The books that we have were probably written to be a Bible book for the communities that they were produced within. And by the time tradition and timing has moved forward, by the end of the 1st century CE, a lot of this stuff has been sort of over-dominated by other intellectual strains, and we get the Tanakh. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it's the mysticism that they have taken out.
You are so on spot. It's my contention, and again, I'm no scholar, and I've never really had the time and the skills to really develop this fully, but a lot of the stuff that gets presented here goes underground and resurfaces occasionally as scrolls are found throughout antiquity. And shortly after the Babylonian Talmud is completed in 650, around 800, there's an emergence of an entire genre of writings like Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer and others that feel very much like this rewritten Bible genre of Jubilees and whatever else. It also hint towards some of these otherwise lost, I would say, suppressed and underground traditions, and that they might have been incorporated in oral transmission as mysticism from when they were no longer embraced within the emerging dominant intellectual traditional strand. They get persisted until such time, centuries later, that they could re-emerge safely. It is a whole conversation that I think you're absolutely spot on. A lot of this really points to things that would be embraced in the mystical tradition, and you'll see one of the texts where I make one of those examples really clear. Excuse me one moment. How many angels are there? God knows. I saw 100,000 times, so 100,000 times, 100,000, 10 millions times 10 millions, right? So this person is reaching for metaphors of numbers big beyond big and innumerable beyond innumerable, uncountable multitudes who stand before the glory, Adonai, of the spirits. I saw them standing on the 4 wings, and I have to this side not understand that God has wings, but winging, like a winged man, if you will. The 4 sides, the 4 corners, and saw 4 other faces among those who do not slumber. Anybody ever heard the song based on the Psalm Shomer Yisrael? Shomer, Shomer Yisrael. It's part of the daily liturgy. It's based on a passage in Psalm 122. Hine lo yanum velo yishan Shomer Yisrael. Behold, neither naps nor sleeps does the guardian of Israel, meaning Jacob, the patriarch, and then expanded metaphorically, right? So that's weirdness, right? And I came to know their names, meaning I actually was able to control them by means of knowing their names, which the angel who came to me revealed to me. And then I heard all these other things, right? Praises before the glory, blessing the name of Adonai, blessing the elect ones who cling to Adonai, the spirits. Third voice, interceding and praying on behalf of those who dwell upon the earth, and supplicating the name of Adonai, the spirits. Fourth voice, I heard expelling the demons and forbidding them from coming to the Lord of the spirits in order to accuse and others serve as a prosecuting attorney in the heavenly tribunal, like we have on Yom Kippur mythology, those who dwell on the earth. And after that, I asked the angel of peace, Sar HaShalom, who was going with me and showed me everything that was hidden. This is a hidden knowledge being revealed. The Greek word for that is gnosis, as in the Gnostics, right? And then what's all this going on? The first one is Michael. The second one, who is set over the disease of every wound in the children of the people, Raphael, the one who knows all the medicine, the healer one, right? Third, the one who's responsible for vitality, physical vitality and exercise and strength, Geber God, right? Gabriel, Geber, the strong guy God. And then the one who makes everybody want to turn around, right? In actions, teshuvah, to turn around, Phanuel, like to face or to turn. A pinah is a corner, and panum is face, right? So the one that would have us turn around in hope and inherit eternal life, Phanuel. So you see that each one of the angelic names points to the mission, the office, not just the identity, but the essence of those angels and demons. So, and those are the four voices I heard. Those are some serious voices. I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit larger. 1 second. And the answer is no. That I can make happen. Right. So what happens, this is not going to work. I have to do this differently. So we've already mentioned demons. And we didn't see demons being created differently from angels. So the natural understanding is that demons are angels gone bad. And you've heard the expression fallen angels, right? Anybody know the Hebrew word for fall or fallen? Nafal. How the mighty have fallen. Ech naflu Hebrew. The fallen ones, the Nephilim, appear in Genesis chapter 5. Yes, there are. But the Nephilim, I'm just using the shortish, right? To fall. The Nephilim in Genesis chapter 5 were heavenly beings that were enticed by the beautiful daughters of humanity with whom they cohabited. The rabbinic tradition says the fallen ones didn't just stop at humans, they cohabited literally with anything that moved and thereby defiled the entirety of God's creation. And the Torah says there was only one line that was taf mem. And in this case, it means perfect, unblemished, fit. In other words, unsullied by this angelic intermingling of identity. And that was the line of Noah. So, So why is Noah and his family saved? Because they're the only family line that hasn't had this cohabitation with divine beings take place. They're the last truly human family. So, I think I'm in Enoch, and no, it's Jubilees. And those days when the children of man had multiplied, it happened that there were born unto them handsome and beautiful daughters of the angels. Children of heaven saw the daughters of the earth, you get what's going on here, and desired them and said one to another, come, let's choose wives for ourselves from the daughters of man, and get our own children. And Samaiyaz, being their leader, said to them, I fear perhaps that you will not consent that this deed should be done, and I alone become responsible for this great sin. In other words, I'm all for it, but I'm afraid that you're going to chicken out and I'm going to be left on the hook for everybody's malfeasance. And the term great sin in the Bible and in rabbinics that follows is regularly used for either adultery or apostasy, which in the biblical mind were interchangeable. So here, this great sin. They said, oh no, we're all good. We're gonna all swear together. They descended into Argos, which is at the summit of Hermon, and their names were as they were. They took themselves wives. They taught them to listen to this. What do these angelic fathers teach their half human offspring? They taught them magical medicine, incantations, the cutting of roots, and taught them about plants. Every last bit of what we would today call homeopathic, but in ancient times was simply called healing, was taught. Right? In other words, the ability to mitigate death. And the women became pregnant and gave birth to great giants whose heights were 300 cubits, in other words, 450 feet. These giants consumed the produce of all the people until the people detested feeding them. Who likes being taxed? So the giants turned against the people in order to eat them. And then they began to sin against birds, wild beasts, reptiles, and fish. And above and beyond that sin, and their flesh was devoured, the one by the other, and they drank blood, which Genesis says you just don't do, and it's repeated throughout the Torah. And then the earth, the very earth itself, brought an accusation against the oppressors. And Azazel, you know Azazel, not quite, Azazel, the scapegoat ritual found in the book of Leviticus that's enacted every Yom Kippur in one way, shape, or form often in many synagogues. Modern Hebrew, you want to tell somebody to go to HE double hockey sticks? Lech la'Azazel. Because the goat was released to Azazel. And scholars like Milgram suggest that Azazel was actually the ancient goat demon, the satyr demon that existed out in the wilderness. Yes, satyr is referenced in the Torah. I only report it. I'm not making this up, right? But it gets even better. So Azazel says, healing? Let me teach them this. Swords, knives, shields, breastplates. In other words, military garb and tools. And show their chosen ones bracelets, decorations, eyeshadow, ornamentation, precious stone, tinctures, alchemy, right? So let's talk about that. And then there were many wicked ones. They committed adultery and erred, and all their conduct became corrupt. Asras taught incantation and the cutting of roots. Amoros, the resolving of incantations. Barakiel, again, all of these are angel/demon figures, taught astrology, and Kekakar-el, the knowledge of the signs, like how to read an augury. Tam-el, the seeing of stars. Astera-el, the course of the moon, as well as the deception of the man. And the people cried out, and their voice reached the heaven. The Hebrew word for cried out is tza'ak. We see that early in the Hebrew Bible, when the bloods of Havel are crying out, when the earth cries out because of the oppression going on with the power of Baal, when indeed the Hebrews in the bondage of Egypt, Tza'ak or Za'ak, it's like the hotline. It's the bat signal. God has to respond. Zayin Ayin Kuf or Tzadi Ayin Kuf. So, they called out and their voice reached the heaven. And now, Michael, Suraphel, again, a name change for one of the big ones, Gabriel, observed carefully from the sky. They saw all the blood being shed on the earth, all the oppression. They said to one another, the earth from her very foundation has brought out this cry to the voice of heaven. So now, Holy Ones of Heaven, the souls of people are putting their case before you, bring our judgment before the Most High. And so here's the accusations. You see what Azazel has done? He has taught all forms of oppression, if not military, then monetary. Oh, you have to have the latest fashions and eye design. Right? And they reveal eternal secrets which are performed in heaven. Gnosis wasn't supposed to be up to humans to know this stuff. Moreover, Semyonids, who will give you the power to rule over his companions, all cooperating, they went and did this to the earth daughters, right? And they revealed every kind of sin. They've given birth to the giants. The earth is filled with blood and oppression. And God, you need to fix this. To which God says, all right, I'll give it a wash.
איזה ספר זה?
אני חושב שזה Jubilees. Yep. So now we're going to go into the rabbis' reactions to a lot of this stuff.
When did you say when it's written?
Jubilees, Arif 150 BCE.
Say that?
150 BCE. According to Jubilees, we saw the angels were created on day one, and they were God's active assistants and partners in getting the work done. The rabbis didn't like that. When were the angels created? Yom Sheni, said Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Hanina says, Yom Chamishi. What happens on Yom Sheni, Mondays, and Yom Chamishi, Thursdays? Yeah. So interesting that the creation of the angels was sort of sublimated underneath those Torah reading days. I think that's pretty darn brilliant of those sages. Rabbi Lulani Bar Tabrin said in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, all agree that the angels were not created on the first day. What do you mean all agree the angels weren't created on the first day? We flat out saw a text that said the angels were created on the first day, and there were a dozen different types of angels created on the first day with different functions. All agree, because only the people who are important to us are the people of the all. So Shadabi said, while Michael was stretching out the firmament to the south, Gabriel was stretching it out in the north. The Holy Blessed One was stretching out the middle. The fact is, God said, I am Adonai that makes all things. So, and then they do this little rabbinic play with words that rabbis will tend to do. The essential thing is, it's sublimated under a Torah reading day, and ultimately it doesn't matter exactly which, because everybody will tell you it's not on day one, like that crazy book of Jubilees tries to tell you. Can we say hello, rabbinic polemic? And now a bunch of rabbinic texts. How is it that the angels traveled? This is from the tractate Brachot. I got it. I feel it. Brachot, Amudalet Daftet. So Brachot 4b, for those that care. How is it that the primary angels arrive? Michael arrives with one flap of the wings. From wherever Michael, the one who is like God, is, all it takes for Michael to get from where Michael is to where Michael needs to be is this one flap. Because after all, God's glory fills the entire world, right? So God doesn't need to flap anything. But Michael, just one flap. That's all it takes. Gabriel, big strong angel, takes two. Elijah, wait, I thought Elijah was the prophet. Elijah's now an angel? Elijah takes 4. The angel of death takes twice as long to get someplace as Elijah takes. And Elijah's usually there for what? What's the first time somebody meets Elijah in their life? if they're a boy? Yeah.
Yes.
So Elijah's going to get there twice as quickly as the angel of death. In this liminal moment, Elijah beats death coming to the bris. Right? But if there's a pestilence, it only takes the angel of death one flap. Just like Mikael. One flap. We see from the discussion about the tidings of Abraham and Sarah's imminent parenthood and the destruction of Sodom and Amorah in Genesis, I think 18 and 19, or 12 and 13, I don't remember anymore, but it's in there, 18, 19. An angel sent is a messenger, a malach. The earlier sessions would have talked about all the biblical terms. The messenger angel, the malach, is only sent with one job. One job. Right? And that one job is ever paired. One angel, one job. That's the way it works. Angels are created according to Breshit Rabbah, the Midrash. They are created without the inclination to do evil, which sort of is belied by all the other conversations about some of those other angels that we've seen before as they become demons. We have a tradition in the world above. There's no sitting down, which is a strange term in this context. More important, no rivalry. Why do humans engage in rivalry? What do you think drives human rivalry?
Jealousy.
Yeah? Ego? Whatever else? Angels? No. They have no backs and they never tire, which is again strange. But Reish Lakish, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, the gladiator rabbi, one of my all-time favorites, flat out admits that until the Jews were in Babylon, they didn't actually have the names for the angels. And the names for the angels we have are completely post-exilic. Before we went to Babylon, the scripture would say, above him stood the Seraphim, or then the Seraphim flew to me. But then much later, scripture would say, the Ish, which is a term for angel, Gabriel, or Michael, your minister, your sar. This nice close textual reading. Before we went to Babylonia, we had these concepts. After we came back from Babylonia, we had their names. You know what else we had different names for when the Jews came back from the diaspora, the original expulsion of Babylonia? Another set of names. The calendar. The calendar. The calendar that talks about the relationship of the stars in the heavens. And the calendar is more than an almanac for planting. It is an astrological tool for divination in the ancient world. And we come back with that astrological tool changed and names for these forces that we never had before after Babylon. Again, don't blame my teachers for my heresies. They did not teach me this at the seminary. Oh, did I miss one? Did I go too quickly? I think I might have. Oh, no, I did not. Okay. So this is taken from the English translation of a book called the Book of Legends, Sefer HaAgadah, Chaim Nachman Bialik and his editor Yehuda Rabnitsky took the range of these different rabbinic tales and their various retellings and sort of edited them and amalgamated them into a particular single narrative, right? So it's a composite, if you will, of something that doesn't exist quite like this, but it brings all sorts of these different traditions and pieces of lore together, right? So getting back, generation of the flood. Holy One agreed. Two angels, Shamhazi, we've seen him before, and Azazel, we saw him before. Basically, that God, give us permission to live with those nice-looking human people, and especially their women. God said, if you go down the Doom, you're gonna mess up. Oh no, you let us go down there and we'll just do nothing but make your name hallowed. I said, all right, go do what you want to do. Anybody who's ever heard a parent say to them, go do what you want to do, knows exactly what that means. They immediately misbehaved with the daughters of men who were so beautiful that the angels could not conquer their impulse. Somehow they became less than angels. Because when they were angels, they didn't have that Yetzer Hara. But then put these hot human women in front of them, and all of a sudden, not being in heaven and being on earth and in front of the temptations of these beautiful women, all of a sudden they do have a Yetzer Hara. That's when Shamhazi, notice a certain maiden whose name was Istahar. Sort of like Ishtar, and I think one purpose. These names, Shamhazi and Istahar, are of Persian extraction. And he gazed lustfully upon her and said, please do what I want you to do. She said, I will not do your bidding until you give me your wings and teach me the explicit name which you recite upon entering heaven. Again, knowing that name is a lot of power. So he gave her his wings and taught her the name, whereupon she uttered it, went up to heaven, and was spared from corruption. There's a parallel to this. I'll get to it in a minute. The Holy One said, since she shunned transgression, go and set her among the 7 stars over there. Anybody know the name of the constellation of the 7 sisters?
Can you make it bigger?
No. Sorry, not this one. The Pleiades. The Pleiades were 7 sisters, one of whom was under sexual assault by a hunter named Orion, and they pleaded with the gods to spare their sister and them because they knew that they would be next. So the god they went to in the Greco-Roman thing said, sure, now you're the constellation, the 7 sisters, the Pleiades. And just to make it fun, I'm going to make Orion a constellation with his dog, so he's eternally chasing you. He'll never catch you, but you're going to be eternally on the run. The story is so ancient that the mention of 7 sisters points to a time at least 20,000 years ago, because since that time, the constellation called the Pleiades is understood to be comprised of 6 visible stars. The stars literally have shifted since the origin of the Pleiades story. And here, Istahar is placed up in the Pleiades. It says here that Istahar was set in the constellation of Draco, the dragon. When Shamhazi and Azazel saw this, they took wives. Shamhazi begot sons, Chiba and Chaya. We'll get back to the boys in a minute. Anybody ever heard of a magazine called Lilith?
Sure.
Anybody ever heard of the creature in Jewish folklore, custom, and tradition named Lilith? Ever heard of Lilith? Lilith. Lilith. She did not compete with. She was the original. And according to the ancient sources, even the rabbis, and certainly later on in the Zohar, when Lilith refused to be submissive to Adam HaRishon, He complained, and God took Lilith away, and she then became this demoness, angry at her punishment because of her rejection of subservience and submission, and made it her mission to therefore, from that point on, to suck the souls out of man's progeny. Which is why, in the German custom, before a Brit Milah, there is an evening called the Wachnacht, the final night before the Brit, where people hang around the boy's crib all night with a red thread or ribbon suspended, just to make sure that Lilith is not tempted to come in the night before her last chance. So, but let's get back to Cheva and Chia. They got the boys, and Shamchazi's doing well. And now this guy Metatron, ding, 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 comes out to tell Shamchazi. Actually, Metatron sent an emissary. Metatron sent a messenger. Metatron sent a malach. Metatron sent an angel. Who sends angels according to Judaism? God. And if you aren't God, you got to be one who is like God, Mikael. And here we have a Greek name for the Michael figure, Metatron. I want us to appreciate that. Here we have a thoroughly rabbinic text that uses a Greek name, and probably for a reason. Shamchazi is told that God's going to destroy the earth. Shamchazi is grieving about the loss of his sons from all this because they are half human. And if all the animals and vegetative stuff on earth disappears, his sons are going to starve to death in the flood. And these boys had an appetite. Each day, each of them ate 1,000 camels, 1,000 horses, and 1,000 oxes. I guess they liked their fleishiks. That night, the boys, Cheva and Chia, had dreams. The first one saw a stone on the ground lying flat like a table. It's topped and sized with many lines of script. An angel came down from heaven. His hand, some sort of chisel, he erased all the lines until there were only 4 letters. Right? The other brother saw a large, beautiful orchard with all kinds of trees, and in the orchard were angels, and they had axes in their hands, and they felled all the trees so that there was only 1 tree left with 3 branches. 1 stone, 4 letters, 1 tree, 3 branches. As Joseph would have said many centuries earlier, the 2 dreams are the same. Upon waking, Cheva and Chia stood up in consternation and went to their father, who said to them, "The Holy Blessed One is going to bring a flood, and only Noah and his 3 sons will be left." Upon hearing this, they all fell to wailing and weeping. He said to them, "Grieve not, your names will never cease from mortals." And to this day, according to the Talmud, the names Cheva and Chaya are mentioned. Whenever mortals are going to saw lumber, Cheva, Chaya, or heave stones, or haul in ships. Heave, Chaya, Cheva, Chaya. Your names will be mentioned. So said the rabbis. At that, the 2 sons, the half-demon, half-humans, grew calm, and Dad, Shamchazi, repented, and this is strange, and suspended himself head down, feet up, between heaven and earth, and to this day he continues thus suspended in his teshuvah. And I can't remember the Greek myth, but it's there, all right? The hero suspended between the spheres, etc. But wait a minute. You're saying, that's all great, but wasn't there two angels at the top of this story? Shamchazi and Azazel? So Shamchazi does teshuvah. What happened to Azazel? Azazel did not repent and still continues in his corruption. And you get that, the chuckling I heard is appropriate because I sense that Bialik and Rabnitsky wanted to present this as that type of tale, not just text, but woven or interwoven, edited in. I mentioned my friend Reish Lakish, my favorite rabbi. Angels only appear in the fourth of the seven firmaments, right? There were seven firmaments: curtain, expanse, grinders, habitation, dwelling, depository, and heavy clouds. Habitation, where the heavenly Jerusalem, the temple, and the altar are built, where Michael, the great prince, all of a sudden, the great prince, stands and every day brings an offering. Dwelling, where innumerable companies of ministering angels, Malachei Hasharet, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, those guys, right? Utter songs by night and are silent by day for the sake of Israel's glory. Depository, where there are stores of snow and stores of hail. It is the loft of noxious dews, the loft of raindrops, the chamber of the storm, and the whirlwind, the cave of vapor. The doors of all of the aforementioned are of fire. Doors of fire. Heavy clouds, where are stored right, justice, mercy, the treasures of life, peace, blessing, the souls of the righteous, and the spirits of those souls destined to be born, and the dew with which the Holy One will revive the dead. There too are the Ophanim, the wheel creatures, maybe even the wheel inside the wheel creatures, the Seraphim, the fire creatures, the celestial creatures, the ministering angels, the throne of glory die, right? And then Acha Bar Yaakov says there's still another layer above the heavenly creatures, but you can't talk about it. But it's said in the book of Ben Sira, don't go there, but try to examine the things that you're not supposed to know about, and instead, remember, meditate on the commandments that you've been given. What God keeps a secret is none of your business. There are other midrashim that do make explicit what are in layers 6 and 7 beyond God's throne. And at another time, I would be delighted to share some of the astounding wisdom that comes from those. I see that we're getting close to 3 o'clock. I want us to... Was that the end? Sandal phone. And here we're going to end. If you need to leave, fine, I understand. I'll happily take questions, comments, concerns, responses. In the Mishnah, we're told about this guy's sandal phone. It said a sandal phone that he is taller by his fellows by a height that would take 500 years to journey across. Welcome to the original science fiction, right? He stands behind the chariot, the Merkava. Ding, 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 ding. The chariot that took Elijah up to heaven alive, and the chariot that is a major fixture of an entire strain of Jewish mysticism called chariot mysticism. But he stands behind the chariot and reads crowns for God and adjures each crown so that it can go up on its own power to God's head, because the implication is that this number 2 under God guy doesn't even know where God is. Okay? In that instant, and all the hosts on high are fevered with excitement and shaken with awe, and the celestial creatures, silent and out, roar like lions. In that instant, they cry out and they say, Kadosh, 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 Adonai, Tzvaot, Melo, Kol Haaretz Kevodo. Holy, holy, holy is Adonai, Tzvaot. The whole earth is filled with God's glory. When the crown then reaches God's throne, the wheels of the throne revolve, The supports of the footstool tremble, and the firmaments themselves are seized with a shudder of terror. As the crown goes up above his throne, all the host above and his crown too, even the divine crown, opened up their mouths to say, Baruch kavod Adonai mimakomo, praise be the glory of God wherever that place is. Then come and behold the greatness and excellence of the Holy Blessed One. When the crown finally reaches the divine head, God accepts the crown from all the servants. Then all the celestial creatures, the seraphim, the ophanim, the kiseh hakavod, the mighty ones and the lowden, raised in dignity, power, and exaltation, ascribe the kol echad in one voice, glory and majesty, saying, Yimloch Adonai, Yimloch le'olam va'ed, the Lord will reign forever and ever. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, v'lo kol ha'aretz kevodo, Baruch kavod Adonai mimkomo, Adonai Yimloch le'olam va'ed. The Kedusha liturgy we sing at a congregational setting. Every time the Amidah is said, daytime, it has the Kedusha in it. When we chant those verses, we are not simply mimicking, but we are being that heavenly choir. And if you've ever wondered why it is that we go up like this when we say those verses, now imagine the traditional synagogue of centuries ago, where the men would have their prayer shawls over their head, and you're looking from behind, and all you see are these white enshrouded forms fluttering each time one of these verses is said. Every time one of those verses was said in the Kedusha, and the men would be under their talit. And so from behind, you couldn't see that they were people. You just saw this white. And you saw them doing this. When those words were being said, they were being the angels offering that praise. Which leads me to believe that the entire idea of the Kedusha liturgy, and there's more than one, different verses and different traditions, or even in the same tradition, different verses for different times of the day, makes me think that the Kedusha was actually grounded in this mystical literature about the angels. And whoever was writing it to be a liturgy was desirous of becoming one of those angels. So with that, there's so much more that could be offered. I wanted to conclude with this text for that very reason. I think it's a really powerful text that we can take with us. Each and every time moving forward, we engage in the Kedusha, we have the opportunity to see ourselves fluttering up like one of the divine angels, as a human angel, offering our praise. So, comments, questions, concerns? Again, don't blame my teachers for my heresy. Sir?
Where can I find those books?
This is specifically from the Book of Legends. It was published by Schocken. It's available, I think, these days, even in paperback. I always recommend the first stop for that to be Amazon.com. Ma'am?
So would you say that the angels are the, quote, wingmen?
Nice. Can I steal that? I promise you, I only steal from the best. I just can't say wingmen, but yeah. So that's a great idea, but also keep in mind that not all of them were winged creatures necessarily, right? So that's part of it. There are other texts that talk about the heavenly rivers of fire from which these angels sprout to chant their Kedusha praises before going back into those rivers of fire to be recycled the next time. I mean, there's just so much there, so much there.